Anne-Elisabeth Moutet, who is a columnist for the Telegraph and joins us now from Paris. Thanks so much for joining us. First of all, what went so wrong for Macron?
It's a combination of things, but I have to take issue with the conclusion of your reporter, because he was not hoping to broaden his base. He knew perfectly well that municipal elections would never be good at the best of times for his party, because his party is actually, it's 4 years old. It's more of a movement than a party. It doesn't have local grassroots influence. It has no incumbents to sort of reconduct, which is always easier voting back in an incumbent. They don't have the kind of organization, and they do not have a tradition of alliances in those various cities where they were running. So at best, it would have been sort of lackluster. Right now, it's been a disaster because Macron comes to this after a series of bad and very bad political situations for him. It starts with the yellow vests in November of 2018, and the yellow vest will demonstrate for almost 18 months, demonstrating against being the forgotten citizens of France, a bit like Trump voters in America. Then you get a very hard 2-month strike against the pension reform. The pension reform is a complicated and completely botched reform in which nobody understood exactly what would happen, and everybody feared that their pension would be cut. And then the COVID hit, and while France actually did pretty well in managing the epidemic itself, not as well as Germany, much better than Britain, the communication, the spin was terrible. There were, in the beginning, the government spokeswoman, rather than saying the truth, which was, we have no PPE, we have no masks, we do not have testing capacity. She said, we do not need tests, we do not need masks, and on until they managed to get them, and then it became immediately compulsory, and people noticed that something that was not supposed to be necessary suddenly became compulsory. And then the president himself in April said there never was a shortage of PPE, which again was a lie that was easy to demonstrate. And this may be a small thing in history of things, but it was something that gave the impression that the government would rather lie than face the truth, and that was really bad. And right now he went on to this from a position of weakness, not a position of force. And then, of course, he is faced with the discontent that accumulated against him. And he was faced also with the fact that the Greens did not want to be the kingmakers. The Greens actually are a small party. They're 14% of the French vote. There were recent polls for the next presidential elections, and the Green candidate only polled 14%. And last, we don't have the percentage yet for this Sunday, the second round, but the first round of the municipal elections was in March, and they had 12.2% in the entire country. So they are kingmakers when they ally themselves with other parties, and then people say, oh, the Greens won.
Okay.
So the whole thing was a recipe for disaster for Macron.
So this clearly does not look good for Macron at all. Le Monde newspaper called it a historical landslide. How would you describe this shift that we've seen in the political landscape right now?
There's a combination of green concerns, but there's also the fact that the country has been trying to kick out the incumbents like many other countries. People call this the populist wave, but it's the feeling that the people who've been in charge for so long have not brought solutions to their problems. And so Macron, in a way, was elected 3 years ago as president because he was young, he was different, he annoyed the left and the right, and people said, well, that's an honorable populist vote. We can have someone who will kick out the incumbents, and at the same time, we're not electing Marine Le Pen. But what they ought to have thought was that Macron himself is a creature of the establishment, that he was formatted in the best government school, where, which is a very narrow class every year, and they rule France for the next 40 years. And his solutions are a technocrat solution. He's not so different from the others. And the disconnect between the hopes and what we saw was something that really disappointed people, and it's like disappointed love. I mean, you're angry.
Thank you so much for your analysis. Anne-Elisabeth Moutet joining us from Paris. Great to have you on the programme.